Let us pray. Gracious God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O you who are our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Now, always this passage makes me think about food. Always. And always makes me think, what have I eaten lately? The one thing I can honestly say I have not eaten lately, and my children did not seem to be hungry for, and this is just a statement for all of you, Chick-fil-A. Somehow we never got there. Yeah. Got those messages on Facebook loud and clear. Well, what did we eat? Well, on the road, of course, you stop at a variety of places, but we decided to economize both on the road and when we got to the campsite. Those of you who have been in the Rocky Mountains camping know you have to be careful either from grizzly or black bears. So the less greasy food or things that would create a lot of waste, the better. I take that to an extreme, especially when you're dealing with a car as small as mine and myself and two children and camping gear. One bag of groceries is all we brought. In the bag for breakfast, my daughter's favorite breakfast food, Pop-Tarts. Foil wrapped, dried, and probably nutritiously not very good at all. But packed with calories as they're going to burn them off. The next item I introduced my children to, especially my daughter, was a big old loaf of bread that sort of maintained its shape through the week, but you're camping, so it generally doesn't. Starts to create, little shaped animals there with the loaf. And something called goober grape. This is the jelly and the peanut butter that's put together at the same time. My daughter thinks this stuff is wonderful now. It's not. Let's be clear. But when you're camping, you can finish. You only carry one jar with you, and you're going to finish that in that week without any trouble. And we certainly did. For snacks, my favorite one are Cliff Bars. They're kind of a cross between a power bar and a granola bar. You don't get all the sugars you get in a power bar, and yet it has that lasting ability and that staying power of something more substantial like a granola bar. So very good, especially as we were hiking and doing different things. But the last one for dinner is my favorite, and that is those little freeze-dried side dishes called Lipton noodles and sauce. They're about $1 an envelope. You tear them open. They 2 cups of water, and you got, in our case, dinner. 2 envelopes, 4 cups of water, cook for 10 minutes over the little tiny stove, 1 pound. That's all I ever bring is the little 1 pound propane, the little screw-on stove, and 1 pot. Girl Scout issued from 1944, thank you very much, and it still works. Complete with the plastic 1-cup measuring cup that came with it. That was our food for the week. Needless to say, there were times we were hungry and had to go to the local pizza establishment just outside Rocky Mountain. That never was quite enough. But we ate, and we ate well. All of these things a lot of them could be taken with us as we traveled, which was good. But there's always a question of what you're going to bring with you. Didn't have a lot of refrigeration for meats, just a cooler. And so this was an important sort of thing to have. Additionally, we have, I love to say this, an impending serious problem for Jesus and the disciples. In today's Gospel reading, or as I love to say, episode, from the Gospel of John, we have an impending serious problem on our hands. The Passover is approaching, meaning it's probably late in the day. And so the people following Jesus cannot travel to their homes. That would be against the law. And they're following Jesus because of miracles that he's doing up to this point, the story tells us. Now in our story, we have a problem. There's a large crowd following him, and Jesus realizes there's nothing for them to eat. So in the John version, we get this wonderful interaction between the disciples and Jesus. Jesus knowing exactly what he's going to do. The disciples, still thinking in earthly terms, having no idea how they're going to find and feed this many people. And the feeding itself takes place. And we're very familiar with this story, many of us. 5 loaves, 2 fish, 5,000 people fed. In some versions, this is 5,000 men plus women and children. So you start adding the numbers going, how many did he really feed? And there could be even more. It's just 5,000 in John, and I would say that's enough. Now, there are plenty of scholars who will try and explain this passage away in very creative forms. I call it kind of trying to undo the miracle. I'm not one of those people. But they would try to do it like this. Well, you see, when Jesus showed that generosity of the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, everybody took out what they had, which evidently they had food with them as well, and see, that's how we got the 12 baskets back. Because of, no. I'm just going for miracle. That's all I think is the result. This happened and they were fed. It does not say that there were 12 baskets of variety breads, candies, sweets, and 5 kinds of fish collected. We don't get those details. What we know is the remaining bread only was enough for 12 baskets. How does this happen? We do not know. But I tend to keep it as miracle. But there's things that we can look at when we think about our own feeding of people where miracles still happen. One of the small miracles that I always look to, and you can look to each week, sits down there. It's communion. With this style of communion, how many people do you think it would take before we ran out of, not host, but the grape juice? Think with those wafers, how little gets on each wafer, no matter how much we could dip it all the way into the end. How many, probably hundreds upon hundreds of people could be served, or wafers would run out long before we ran out. And if you've ever done it with bread, right, and you start with that, the pastor starts with that big loaf of bread that fits on one plate rather nicely. And then the bread is broken and put on the different plates. For 20 years, I have tried to get the pieces of bread back onto the one plate, and unless I'm really good at jigsaw puzzles, in 2 seconds, it never seems to fit, does it? And never with bread have I ever run out. Now, part of it is how people take the bread when they do it. When people see the bread going low, they take that little tiny crumb off to the side, and that's it. Always interesting when they're doing intinction, because I got to watch what comes next. How are they going to do intinction with this? Many times the bread is held, and then the host, you go over and receive the bread and you dip it into the cup. Well, with a small piece, that can be hard. But even people who take kind of the biggest hunks and rip them off, still, there's plenty. And that happens every week. I mean, we clergy have this, okay, there's a little bit in the chalice in case we run out of grape juice. There's the host that I broke just in case. I have not ever, in 20 years, gotten close. Never. Now, I have had weeks where people have forgotten to bring the elements. I had that happen in my church in Iowa, and they're running up the aisle during communion with the elements because they forgot and had to run to the store. That has happened. But the other one hasn't. Because there's something about this where there's always plenty. But the real problems in our world are 2 types of hunger. The real hunger, which John talked about and always prays for every week. The people in real physical need of food. There's always that need. There are wonderful people out there. People in management at places, I am going to mention generous with their giving and their help. Even other organizations helping the regional food bank to resupply. Bread suppliers, frozen food suppliers, even meat suppliers, giving of their excess and making donations. Individuals like yourselves, making sure. One of the programs that we did back in Iowa, the backpack program, we're not talking about school supplies, we're talking weekend food for those people that qualify, those children that qualify in their schools for free or reduced lunches through the regional food banks can receive small, very easy to prepare snacks and small food items. I got the honor of being able to start that in my church. Simple, small things that I can help to do to feed children within my own community. And the sad thing about that with the Cora, and I know Oklahoma City is not like this, no other church would have hosted. We were a small congregation like you are, and we ended up playing host. Buying, don't laugh, storage lockers for tools and turning them into food storage lockers. The large vertical ones with the closing doors that you see at Lowe's or the Home Depot. But they're rodent-proof, they are washable, and they are elevated off the ground and lockable, so they're perfect for dry food storage. A grant from the area community, and I ended up buying and borrowing someone's truck to load like 4 of them home at one shot. It was a sight down the interstate that had to be seen to be believed. That's that as well. The other shocking piece to this is not just the physical hunger, but the spiritual hunger that's out there. Too many times now, since I've taken on a new church start, have I heard that there are too many churches in any one area. And why would you start a new church start? The last thing America needs are more churches. Here's the problem. In USA Today, just a few weeks back, a survey came back that said that 19% of Americans surveyed said they had no religious belief or affiliation at all. That has changed from the Roof and McKinney study done in 1985 that said that 20% didn't attend a church on a regular basis, but only 2% had no religious belief. That number has gone up tremendously. There is still need in every community for a place that you can be fed physically, but spiritually as well. And the more variety we can offer every kind of community, communities of young people, communities of LGBT persons, communities of elderly, communities of minorities, in a variety of worship styles, this being one of many, the better off we are. As I say, every week we look out and there are people visiting in our midst for a variety of good and wonderful reasons. But the most wonderful reason is hopefully they're hungry. As I went out this week, one of the things I wasn't this week, even with that meager diet that you heard of camping, I never got really hungry. Why? Because I was full. One of the things you have to know about me is I receive, and some of you on the search committee remember this, a lot of my connection to my faith is outdoors. And the closer I get and the more in touch I get with God, my Creator, the more full I become. That's an important piece that I get fed by that means. All of us get fed a different way. I get fed sometimes through music, through parts of worship. One of the joys and the feeding times for me here is down there. It's been a new and joyous discovery. more than likely all of us are spiritually hungry. It's no accident that many weeks I forget to eat dinner on Sunday nights. Now that happens to be because you do worship at 6 p.m., and I forget to get the food before I come here or I have meetings, and afterwards I'm just kind of too tired to go out, and I just go home. But I don't even think about it some weeks until I get home. Because what I find, and I hope you find as well, is that there's always an abundance of food with God. There's always an abundance of joy with God. Because with God, even if we can't feed ourselves, God can feed us. God can always offer us a food where we will never go hungry again. That is a power that only God can give. Be fed. Feel God's love and care for you this night. And know that with God, all food is there in tremendous abundance. And it's always there, abundantly, for all. Amen.